I can't even see. This is what I get for giving you the claustrophobic chair.
I just want to move the table back a little bit.
I don't know.
To
You
the
think
front.
we look a little bit uncomfortable?
No, you look squished in the back.
No, but so then the pink dot or X or whatever.
Oh, you're taped down the cable.
That's, yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry. And you rearranged the
I think it
furniture.
probably could come out.
yeah.
I'm actually not even.
What do you mean?
I have no water.
I didn't tell.
No, I have like, I've got my platinum status for the year, so I figured let's like go try it at the hotel.
This is why I hate people. Why I hate them running over.
It's nice.
It's like,
But it's also like, well, there's not a Hilton, there's not one in there.
is there, which one?
There it is, there it is.
Yeah, that's not what I want. It's like,
That's that, although the IETF. The last one was that design. Start with. The Queen Elizabeth.
No, I thought that was like an independent thing.
why is it not letting me scroll down?
So it's like a, I didn't know that.
Groups
I thought
security.
that was not something.
Our one's also in.
You better.
This is why I
You try
stopped.
that arrow.
I wouldn't call it.
Try to use a.
Yeah, it scrolls down what's behind it. It doesn't scroll down what's in it.
JavaScript.
That's gonna give me all the materials I can't find. So it's just the slides.
I was going to see the other one.
Have you been on the Java?
Do you need me to be on the Jabber? I can get on the Jabber.
No, it's not letting me log in.
Oh, no, I was on the Jabber this morning. I filed tickets. Yeah, I'm on. Yeah, I'm on.
Okay.
We had Adam, Alistair, Adam again, Jessica, Kathleen. I'm on the Jabber. Steven's on. Bill's on. Bill's on again.
Why I hate Huh? Do what? Well, I found that. Right, but it's a different keyboard with a different set of heads. It's not working. I don't want to have to go on with that to where I was. And I keep ending up with his slides instead of mine.
Nothing else for home stuff?
No, I mean, for all these the long slides. This keeps me from being really incredibly grumpy.
So I'm working with the guy in this. And he built this actually technological approach that allows you to find information on the press a button and generate schemas and like very different formats. So it's a way of sort of automating the data modeling process.
Yeah. Well, you convert, you have like a high level repetition.
And it couples like documentation examples. And then we have a bunch of transforms that we run, and it can generate code, it can generate like, documentation, schemas, code.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like it would represent that information model. It also generates
It's just crazy.
content converters that can transcode.
Why
Because you have like, you have the IR.
You have that effective. Yeah, yeah.
What are you guys doing there for?
Well, for this risk management. So we came up with this approach at the same time.
And then if you want to make it also, you just have to
We've
do
saved
that.
probably, it took us
Push
a year
here.
and a half to build, we've saved now
Push
10
there.
years.
That's amazing. That's great. Are you guys going to
Yeah, we're in the process of actually generalizing it.
And we need to do
We're
this.
setting up a GitHub.
You think you'll get penetration across?
Yeah, so
So.
we want to start using it for Sacm.
Sure.
Like Opal, those kinds of things.
I'm gonna read it.
Once we're further along, I'd like to talk with some other folks here in the IETF. I think I can actually represent Dying as an information model. Just saying. But we're looking to do this.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Did you get a scribe and do we have a Jabber scribe?
Who's Jabber Scribe? I'm not
Excellent.
sure if I can take it.
Okay, so do we have a note taker? He jumped on Jabber scribe, so we wouldn't ask him to be a note taker.
It looks like the last person that comes in loses.
All right, do we have a note taker, please? Going once? Going twice? Note taker? Note taker? I wonder if I can get Hank to do it since he's appears to be too distracted to say no. Note taker?
I have to work. Sorry.
You have to what?
Work.
Okay. Note taker, anyone? Anyone? Really, people?
If you do feel like, we'll wait until we have one.
Wait, I could do that, but I'm looking at the room and I'm sensing that that might mean we just don't have the meeting. Chris, are you going to take notes?
Yep.
So I guess one of our chairs has generously agreed to take notes, and I will note that that is not me. So apologies for getting started late. Note to self, kick the side meeting out in a timely manner. Blue sheet going around now. No, it's the one that's up here. Okay. I do believe we are now ready to get started. Apologies for the delay. This is the Sacm working group in the IETF. We have a Jabber scribe and we have a note taker, and the blue sheets are about to begin. This is the note well. When you registered for the meeting, you will have agreed to this. This is a reminder that these conditions still apply in this meeting. This is the agenda that we have for today. We're going to rejigger it slightly to allow a couple of folks that need, or at least one person that needs to leave. So the first thing we're going to cover real briefly is the status of the COSWID document and the early document, which have both completed working group last call. And then at that point, we will proceed with the agenda as it is. So any other agenda bashing? Agenda bash?
Is there an item for the terminology document? Is it still expired at the moment?
It is expired.
Yeah.
But I keep putting it on the agenda for an update so that you will tell us what we're going to do with it. This is called passive-aggressive pressure.
I see now. So I can join Dave's to keep because then we have that slot. Okay.
Can you repeat that, please?
I have to go to TEEP at some point.
Okay, so we'll do terminology third.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Roman Donadio, so perhaps we'll cover this in working group status way ahead. I would like to bash milestones and versus documents at the end.
Yes, you are the milestone AD. All right, so Stephen, do you want to give a really quick update on Rolly?
Okay, so the Rolly software descriptor document has gone through working group last call and has received a decent amount of review and feedback. That feedback has been integrated into the most recent version of the document. It's been updated, and I believe that the document is now ready to move forward through the shepherding process if the chairs are ready for that as well.
I believe we are, so.
Great, thanks.
Great.
Okay, that's all I have.
Excellent, thank you. So that document is done and ready for shepherding. CoSWID?
You can do it at the place where everybody can see you since there's a lot of remote people.
All right. Yeah, I forgot about that. I'm the JavaScript too. I completely failed that.
Good morning, Dave Woltermeyer. We've completed, it feels like a few working group last calls on CoSWID at this point. We've gotten a ton of feedback on the document. That's all been addressed. The most recent feedback we've gotten was from Kathleen. She fixed a bunch of she pointed out a bunch of typographic editorial issues that were fixed in the latest draft that was posted. She did raise a couple of issues, which there's been some back and forth on the list about. I wanted to raise those in the room just for awareness. So the first one was she was suggesting that we add support for using Cozy Web tokens as a way to support signing in the CoSWID draft. I suggested that it was pretty late in the hour as far as work on the draft that we were looking to send it forward. I suggested that maybe if there's interest in pursuing that kind of solution, that we look at maybe writing a second draft to describe how one would do that. We could do a BIS as well. I'd personally like to see more implementers raise their opinions as far as what kind of signing approach that we would like to see in the draft.
So, hi, this is Hank from the mic. While it might look very obvious to do that, I'm using CWT a lot for a lot of things, and unfortunately it was not ready at the point where we started. That is one of the reasons why I haven't done that. But now it's a small lift certificate format. It's a token format. So the issuers and subjects and issue a date, and this is redundant semantic to CoSWID. So I have no way of breaking semantic clear strict division of semantics when we include, and we have to include them, the optional items that are issuer and the claims from CWT. We would swamp the CWT registry with roughly 80 to 100 new items, and I think there are 20 in there right now. So we would dominate that place suddenly.
Right.
I know it could be done, and if there's a good use case for it, I'm all for guiding everybody through the process because I'm very familiar with it. But I'm not sure it's solving an actual problem.
Right, and I think from that perspective, there's a lot to talk about, and something that conversation is going to take a number of months probably to conclude, which will just further push back the publication of CoSWID. And but I think what I'm proposing as a way forward maybe is that we publish CoSWID as is, and that if there's interest in looking at a CWT-based signing solution, that we have that as a separate conversation.
Kathleen on the Jabber has mentioned that she will help. She also mentioned that she is going to read the Rolly document from before. I missed that comment because I was up here talking about it, so I apologize.
So are there any,
Sorry, Kathleen put in chat here, potentially remove the method specified and do it in a separate draft?
What does it mean?
I mean, given that there are integrity security considerations, relating to a COSWID, I think that the responsible thing is to provide at least a signing solution, at least an integrity mechanism as part of the draft to provide for that integrity. I think if we were to pull that out, we would be providing only a partial solution, which, given that there's already interest in using, COSI, it doesn't seem like we should have to do that at this point in time.
Sure.
This is Stephen as Stephen. Yeah, I think I agree with Dave that signing is pretty important. I mean, if we look at some of the interest around SWID itself, signing is a pretty important use case in a lot of places, and it's important to how people are intending to and are currently using SWID.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to fully support SWID in COSWID, then signing something that's going to need to get done.
Yeah, and I mentioned to Kathleen that COSI as a signing container is roughly parallel to XML DSIG for
Never tell Jim that.
for SWID tags. It's a similar kind of approach.
And also we need signing because otherwise we cannot do the appraisal policy, reference value, known good value stuff from the asserters, and the draft is basically done, and we have to do a reference to the RFC, and that will be very important. So if you can't sign it today and wait for the next iteration, a lot of people will be kind of mad. Yeah.
Right. So I guess we're looking to the chairs as far as guidance on how to pursue this at this stage.
So I feel like the conversation just happened. So managing too many things at once as chair. There was a room says we should figure out how to do signing. Do you think we should delay for adding signing to the draft? Because that part wasn't exactly clear to me. And then doing something like a full.
We use COSI. There is an appendix how to sign it and what header fields to use where and when and why. It is in the draft.
Okay, so it wasn't clear to me you wanted to add another mechanism.
I think
from the conversation.
I think it's worth discussing other mechanisms, but I believe that those should probably be added as extensions to. Well, I mean, there's this CWT suggestion.
CWT uses COSI. It's the same.
Sure.
I just wanted to make sure that Kathleen had a couple responses, and I want to make sure that her opinion got voiced here as well. She agrees that signing is important, but that multiple methods are confusing. Maybe waiting a little bit makes sense. She's worried about adoption, not just getting the draft out the door.
Yeah, sorry, this is I think my last comment was not on the mic. CWT uses COSI, as does COSWID. It is the same method. So if we would have a BIS or an additional document, it would basically say we now use the 7 CWT claims also. And I think that's the only difference. And the CWT registry and swamp that. So that basically that is the only addition we would make. And I'm not sure if you're breaking anything before or after, because we will literally use the same signing mechanism that is a COSI envelope. Both of them use them, I think. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's the same thing. Also, when Kathleen wants to do this BIS or other document, we are happy to help with that. That is not a problem. I don't think that the signing is breaking at something today, because it's the same thing.
So I think I understand the room. I want to take it to the list, but sounds like we have nominally a way forward. I just want to finish off the discussion on the list to be sure. And if the case is that there's general consensus that the signing that's present now is sufficient, we'll move it forward.
Okay. All right. And that sounds good. And then there was one other issue raised by Kathleen's review. So currently, for identifying hash algorithms, we use the named hash algorithms registry in COSWID. She was suggesting maybe that we align that with the COSI algorithms registry, which uses a slightly different identifier space for similar algorithms. I think the challenge that we have is one of algorithm agility. The nice thing about using the named hash algorithms registry is it's just hash algorithms. If we were to point to the COSI algorithms registry, we would need some way of selecting out of that registry only the hash algorithms, because those are the only algorithms that actually make sense to be used in this context. But there isn't really a mechanism to do that, because the hash algorithms in the COSI registry are not identified in any different way from signature algorithms and others.
There's a good reason for that, because Jim Schad refused to do simple hashing in COSI for years. And only a few months ago, he kind of accepted to try this. So there is now a hash ID in COSI. But again, we started this work like years ago, and there was nothing. And Jim said, no, we are not going to do this here. This is something that could be buzzworthy, to include another valid registry for hashing. But it is literally not necessary, because the INR named information registry is the general one. So if you use algorithms there, and you want to assign JSON, for example, that works way better, then we are going to use the COSI specific one again. But this is something we can discuss in the next iteration of this document, I assume. It is not a blocker today, because the other document is not done also. Oh, and Kathleen is actually cool. Here.
Okay, Kathleen.
Hi. I guess there's a few things. On
your
this,
volume's a little low. It's hard to hear you in the room.
Okay, sorry. I'll do my best. The COSI working group is open, so things can get fixed right now.
Right.
As Hank mentioned, hashing was added. That's actually something I had conversations with Jim in back channels as one of the people that was helping to motivate it. And back on the CWT, I'm really afraid of having multiple methods and then just something that's only used for COSWID and not used elsewhere. You're going to have random developers who are going to be implementing this, and if they're using something that's familiar, CWT, which is, yes, very similar. It also does signing, but it has claims as well and is in a registry, then I think you would get better adoption, and adoption is important.
Thoughts?
Actually, before Kathleen gets out of the group, can you just say something again, Kathleen, because the Meet Echo guys were working on volume. Can you just say hello again?
Oh, hello.
That's a bit better, not much. Okay.
All right, sorry, I can grab a headset. Well, actually, I do have one here.
It's in the room, not
Yeah,
you.
it's not you. It's us here.
Okay.
You were clear. It was just as you ended speaking, he asked if it was better now, and I was just wanted you to continue for another half second to see if it was.
Okay, do you need me to repeat anything of what I've said?
No, you're good.
Yeah, it was, hi, this is Hank again. It was at the level that everybody's really silent and not typing. We heard you, and I think we heard you all. So, hi again.
Hi.
What benefit will the CWT claims provide? That is my only actual concern, because they conflict with semantics here.
So this is going to be a one-off, right? how many other things will just use the signing or the hash function in this way by programmers?
I'm not talking about the cozy part. I'm talking about the CWT part that brings its own claims.
Familiarity, just that it's going to be a common thing used, right? It might be a little bit overkill because the claims in there as well, but you might have additional claims on top of that on a software package that you've done testing on or whatnot, or things that maybe aren't quite covered. There might be other things that you want to attest that. You might want to do some of the functionality that's being baked into an EAT where you have the nested claims and just following that same structure. So if you have dependent libraries, you might want to reference them within your larger CWT.
We provided comments to EAT to do it like CoSwitch, so they're now, the structure is not similar. We already have nested claim sets for years now, and we enumerate them. And from the technical parsing side, I think they're already basically the same. We're just not adding the CWT tag in order to prohibit people to sprinkle in CWT claims that do not belong into the thing. Because if you are CWT, people are allowed to use the claim there. And that's the only thing we wanted to prohibit. The rest is actually, I think, today identical. You can even, I'm using a CWT parser to parse CoSwitch at home.
Okay. All right. So, I read the document. I understand Cozy. I was the AD for it. So, I get how all of this works. My concern is just developers reading this and, someone saying, oh, that's just a CWT, so I just use this package and just get it done, as opposed to how it's described now, which is very specific and into the weeds.
Okay, see.
It might scare some developers, which might sound silly, but if adoption's the end game, then you make things as easy as you can.
Yeah. My biggest concern right now is just, as late in the game as we are, as far as working on this draft, it's a barrier to adoption to not get the draft out there. And I know there's a bunch of other standards organizations that want to make use of this draft once it's published. So I'm trying to balance the interests of the sort of initial use that we have in the community around CoSwitch, as well as addressing some of these other use cases. And I like to find a path forward that will allow us to shepherd the draft forward while we work to solve some of these larger integration
question
problems.
As a chair. So if it can already be parsed as with CWT, can we add a bit of text that prefixes the discussion of the cozy signing that kind of allays you could use the CWT machinery and make this happen, but then keep most of the signing text in place?
That would be great.
Oh,
that's possible.
You're much clearer now. Would you be willing to submit some text for that purpose, Kathleen?
I can. Or if one of the authors, it sounds like Hank has this in mind already, so I don't know if he's the right person to do that or if I should.
Can you restate what we think is a good idea and see whether everyone is comfortable with that?
The idea is asking
in the mic.
To the mic.
Restate it, so.
Go ahead. I think Hank, do you have a sense of? All right. So what I heard was we want to add some text to the draft to discuss how CWT use may fit into CoSwitch without defining the specifics of that.
Tony Nadlin. So I agree with Kathleen. This could just be if all it's happening is the claims are different. They're not in the same namespace, the IENA registry. Then it's just a profile on top of CWT, which you're allowed to do. So you can add these. You can do the extension of your claims, but you're actually using CWT with these extension claims that are there.
Well, we don't have any specific claims defined.
Then I don't know why you're not using CWT at all. If you don't have any additional claims defined.
Because we have a CBOT tag defined, and then MIME and content type and all of that, because we just want to have simple parsing at the very first bytes. If you go with CWT, you do not have that.
Right. So that could be a problem with the parsers, with the CWT parsers.
That is that. Yeah. No, actually, I tried that. That's not a problem. But you're right. It could become one. It could become one.
A very potential problem, and that may cause people
So-
all sorts of issues that have CWT libraries out there
Okay.
today. So there has to be some.
I see your point. So, but could we prohibit the use of the 7 CWT claims? Is it allowed to have a profile for CWT that says you're not allowed to use the CWT claims because they would like pollute the content?
No, because I think those are the base claims.
I know, and that is we had for half and a half year we had CWT as a basis in the document, and then we realized, oh, this is breaking it, and we throw them out, and so then
Something
the text.
I'd have to look at to
Yeah.
see what we could.
Yeah, if there's a possible solution here, and if you can look into that, that would be awesome, because then my concerns would be basically gone, and we can use the whole CWT structure.
But I do see some interoperability problems with CWT parsers out there today,
Yeah.
potential problems.
So this is saying finalizing this, there was a good reason that we created a own CBOT tag registry for this, because we wanted to have, there's a lot of claims in there. And if you have a general CWT parser, you create a lot of confusion and overhead until you finally understand what this is, because they are not self-defining, self-describing in this case. You have to parse the whole thing. And now, Roman.
Wow, that's tall. Hi, Roman Dilio. All I would advise the group to do is, if we're going to do something in a slightly non-standard way, that we explicitly document that design decision so it's in the document and we don't reopen that up when it gets IETF last call or during the ISG.
It's not exactly that we're doing it in a non-standard way, though. We're just trying to decide what standards to pick from, right?
Sure. And sorry, my words were imprecise. I think there would be value in documenting the design choice.
Okay, so we have an action to do that, and I just wanted to finish the conversation about the hash identifier registry. So I emailed the COSI working group this morning asking for advice on what to do if it will be possible to add some sort of label to the COSI algorithms registry that would allow us to just point to the hash algorithms. To seek their advice on what to do. And based on that, then we can have a conversation, a tactical conversation about whether we make the switch or whether we stick with the named hash algorithm registry that we currently use. So hopefully that's something that we can clear up on the list, very, very quickly after this meeting. But those are basically the only 2 outstanding issues that haven't been addressed. Everything else is more or less ready to go, and the core of the specification hasn't really changed in like 3-4 meetings now. So it'd be nice to get it wrapped up.
Yeah, we're a little bit on the frosting part, and it is kind of hard. So This is why I'm here again, Henrik and Adam. Like, could we have some deadlines for this? So like 3 weeks for this, done. And 3 weeks for this done, and really be done at that time frame, because if we do not get this out this year, we might get in another vicious cycle.
Yeah. I don't have sufficient expertise in CWT to write this text, so I'm going to need some help with that. Either from Hank or from Kathleen or someone.
I mean, Kathleen's welcome to chime in. We can just make a micro listing here and then iterate text or something.
So, I mean, within a week of receiving that text and getting some consensus within a working group, I could produce an updated draft to address that.
So I would like to know when the text would be coming. That's the deadline I would like. If we had something that went through working group last call, it got finalized, and now we're going to make another change. So if we're going to make that change, it needs to come soon.
Okay. Kathleen is still on, so I make a solution proposal here, just proposal. Kathleen, if you could make a concise write-up of the requirements, not the solution, we can start from there. I can incubate that here in the IETF and have this ready on Friday, if that is okay.
Friday would be perfect.
Yeah,
that would lower my level of angst.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to have done this like very, very soon, but I need something tangible that is the kind of checklist, like, okay, done, solution. Then I can create solutions very fast. If I have just a amorphous idea in my head, it's very hard for me to create it.
Okay, so Kathleen says in the chat that she can try and get something done by normal hours tomorrow.
Thank you. Yeah, no, fine. No, not now.
So if Kathleen gets something done by tomorrow, you think you can get something by the end of the week?
Affirmative.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I'm also hoping to unlist at least to close out the hash identifier question as well this week if I can get the necessary feedback.
So if we get the feedback done this week, then next week is Thanksgiving. So maybe by the end of the first week of December, you could have a rev.
That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really nice. It would be really nice to hit the publish on this before the end of the year.
Yeah, it would.
Excellent.
Okay, I think that's it.
All right.
All right, thanks.
Okay. So this is the
Passive, not you said. Repeat that often, please.
This is the torture document editor by requiring him to do an update when there hasn't been an update.
Yeah, the current terminology draft is expired. Unfortunately, Adam and Bill are not here on site today. Oh, I am Hank Buckers, by the way. Sorry, I didn't introduce me. And I have no slides. And so the thing is that we have not agreed on 5 core concepts in the architecture. Until then, reviving the terminology draft is just churning words around without any real target. If I would have chimed in the architecture document again, which I literally had no time for, sorry, and that's gobbled up way more time in the last 2 months than I anticipated. So I couldn't do it. So yes, I'm partially to be at fault here, and I'm sorry to the group that there is no open document. Adam and I are in discussion about this, and he really wants to finish the architecture core concepts, and if that is done, it makes sense to put it all into the terminology again. Roman.
Hi, Roman Danilo. I've now, I guess, lost the bubble. We still want the terminology document. We need the terminology document.
We need the terminology document because the architecture has to close at some point, and it has to be near future. So, and then we have the other complementary solutions, and they will have slight modification to the terms that the architecture cannot take into account today, unfortunately.
Okay, I will re-ask those same questions when we bring up the architecture document.
Yeah, is Adam or Bill going to try
Yeah,
Hi.
They're on the agenda and they have some slides, so we will be talking about the architecture document.
No, right?
Yes. Yeah, actually, EPCP is up. Do you want to do architecture first? Yeah, we're going to put Jess first. All right. So we will revisit terminology and architecture, and now we're going to Jess. So I think we're going to do the slides, and you're going to get in the remote queue and chat if you can. Okay, Jess, can you get in the queue, or are you? I guess I should look at chat and see if she's answering me. It's not letting her in the queue. Why is it not letting her in the queue? Let Kathleen in the queue. did you?
Kathleen left on her own.
Yeah.
Exactly how it's supposed to work. There's no one in queue. She's in the Meet Echo.
She's in Meet Echo. She's not in the queue.
Oh, got
Just hit the red button just to see. Nope. Okay.
She said she's.
Do you have?
No, just to appear.
Oh, right. So the slides are self-explanatory. Yeah, I've had better luck with this in the Chrome browser. I don't know if you have a Chrome browser up. Oh, she is using Chrome. Okay. Meet Echo. This is where we were really supposed to arrange you as a remote presenter, and we did not do that. Okay, so you're a participant. Another second or two. Meet Echo is on the case. Just go ahead and show the people the slides. Okay.
Oh, this will be fun.
I'll push the button and you can talk.
I apologize in advance, Jess. All right, so there was an update, and the name finally changed. The update was, what, late October? Is that right? Jess, you can correct me on that. Relatively recent, captures all the feedback from everyone. Thank you for the feedback. Go ahead. All right, here's the updates, right? So I'm going to go in reverse order. So clarified. Okay.
Try one more time.
Jess, can you try again?
Okay, we'll continue.
Oh, hey, did something here. Anyway, okay. Further clarify the use of MAC addresses as an endpoint identifier. Added support for the CoSWID in the SWAM extension. And then updated the diagram, posture manager, and make the endpoint the focal point. So those are all pretty straightforward changes. Go ahead. Oh, wow, there's a lot. Jess, I curse you right now. Emphasize the need to consider privacy regulations when collecting and storing data. These are all pretty self-explanatory. Let me ask the quick question of how many folks have read the update? Hank has. To this previous update, to this last update that happened.
The second to 250.
Who's read the latest?
Who's read the?
You should go to the mic. You know better.
Yeah. Who's read the very latest version?
What was the latest version posted? I read a version. Recently?
Yeah, relatively recently. Okay, so and as Kathleen's commenting on Jabber, so she has comments still outstanding. So this is kind of a pretty comprehensive set of changes that have been made from feedback based on all of those folks. You can read through this, made clear protocols and interfaces other than the NIA and NetConf may be supported, provisioned with a machine certificate. All right, so any other required changes? So I think that Kathleen just commented she doesn't have anything outstanding. I would really like to get a final read-throughs, even if it's just getting through the diff of the last version. Hank volunteered just now.
I already did. It's fine.
Oh, okay. Hank did. And Kathleen has volunteered. Can I at least get one more? Yeah. And Stephen, thank you. Jess, anything else you want me to? Mike?
Romandilia, I had a quick question about the type of document this is. So this was tagged BCP. I've forgotten, did we discuss BCP versus standards track? Versus proposed standard?
So if I'm not mistaken, it's not even BCP. Isn't this informational?
When I looked,
Jess, did you change it?
when I looked at it, it was BCP, and I wanted to talk about that. Yeah. It says BCP, and
it was standards track and moved off from standards track.
So this is Stephen channeling Jess. We did discuss that in version 04 and decided BCP.
I remember having the conversation. I do remember that. I don't remember choosing BCP versus informational, but that's probably in notes somewhere.
Let me go look at the discussion, and I'll come back if I need to.
Thank you.
So, oh, never mind. I was wondering if Jess could put in the chat if she remembers what the rationale was. I'm seeing nothing.
At the time, informational drafts were not widely accepted.
I think getting BCPs through is harder than getting informational through, isn't it?
So let me put that in Mike since Jess.
So when we make a context-free statement.
Yeah, let me read Jess's comment to the mic first. She said, at the time, informational drafts were not being widely accepted. If that has changed, we can reconsider.
Yeah, so I'll make a context-free statement. I have not read whatever was the discussion we had. If I read it, I apologize. I've forgotten. I mean, part of it is it seems like it's a profile, so we're doing all sorts of normative language to describe behavior on other kind of PSs and other stuff kind of outside. And so kind of if we're doing BCP, it would be great to certainly talk about the basis of all of that experience. It would seem weird to be informational.
I think that was actually the discussion we had.
Yeah, I was looking for a technical reason, not it's an easier to publish one way or the other. And I personally don't remember what it was.
Again, I mean, I'm going to have to do an AD review on this kind of, anyway, so let me find the old
Actually,
discussion.
the conversation, as I recall it, since you just said that, was there's a lot of shoulds, musts, and others in an informational document that seems a little fishy. And I believe that's why we chose BCP. Standards we thought was going to be hard, since this specifies a bunch of things that aren't necessarily under our normative control.
Okay, let me find the discussion, and I'll come back if we need to talk about it more.
Okay. Any other questions on this draft? Okay. I think what we need to do then is to set a time window for those additional reviews that we requested. And then based on that, make a call on the mailing list about moving it forward. I mean, we're going to move it forward unless something, I can't see anything coming up that would cause us not to move it forward. So what's a reasonable time frame for getting those reviews?
How long is it right now?
How long is the document?
I haven't looked at it recently.
Kind of long. I thought it was like 60 some, but I could be wrong. And close to being able to tell you, but not quite. Uno momento. 41. Yes, you were closer. It's 41 pages, Stephen. It's a very long flight home.
Yeah, how about, I don't know, 2 weeks? Is that fine?
Okay, so it'll be the first week of December. Okay, so comments first week of December. All right. So I think next up is architecture. Okay. I think we're going to do Adam in a vertical. Oh, look at that. Okay, Adam, speak.
Just kidding. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Good. Okay, so architecture updates. I'll be honest with you. Bill is having technical difficulties, and he was actually supposed to be the person presenting. So instead, you get to see me. So good morning. All right, cool. So we pushed an update on the 29th, as the slide says. Covered a bunch of issues in the draft that were up in GitHub. I don't think we have to go through necessarily all of those. Can we go to the next slide, I believe? Right, so we did add a really super simple architectural overview diagram that basically starts with producer to integration service to consumer kind of diagram. All the subsequent diagrams are now referenced as role-based diagrams instead of component diagrams. I know that we've had discussions about being more role-focused rather than component-focused to try to clarify that all of these things can be composite depending on how you, a vendor might implement or rather might package them. So next slide. Cool, right. Other updates, we did reorganize it. So Hank, you might want to take a look at it. We were hoping to get some feedback from you, but as you mentioned earlier, you didn't have the time, so we just went ahead and took a stab at it. Again, we updated sections for collection sub-architecture and evaluation sub-architecture, and Bill actually templated sections for each security domain workflow. We ended up spending a lot of time on the configuration assessment one for obvious reasons, I think, but it just happens to be the one we know the best. It would be cool to get some help for some of the others. Next slide. Yep, what's next? More draft updates, we hope, right? There are a few issues remaining in GitHub. One that I think is one that will definitely need some help on, I think Kathleen is presently attached to adding a section or subsection somewhere on attestation. And then there's a few other things that we need to figure out, like do we remove the XMPP specific information and start putting that into its own draft? You know, things like that. So I think that's it. Next slide. Is there another slide? Nope.
Nope, that's the end.
Okay. I'm curious, I think Hank said something earlier actually about 5 outstanding issues with the architecture draft related to the terminology. I was curious as to what those are.
It's the reorganization, like for the orchestrator, the role, and the interfaces. Before they were interfaces, they're not interfaces anymore. All this is, I think, 3 of them were at least addressed by the issue tracker. At least they're reviewable now, and there are 2 more open ones. I sent you a list of the 5 items, I don't know, months ago, probably it's somewhere. I can find it again. So we have to just cross-check that these are all consistent now, because if I change 2 of them and then the other ones change and we change everything, it's all the churn. It's like module churn. And so I would like to have them stable. And if they're stable, we can move on to the next phase and then sync it with the other text. And that should be easy because you're familiar with the other text. So we can do it in concert, that'd be even faster.
Okay. Yeah, can you resend that and then we should connect on it so that we can wrap everything up. So I'm also curious how many people might have read the update. I mean, it's been out for a while now, actually. A couple weeks, 3 weeks, something like that.
So how many people have read the draft? It's 2, Hank and Chris.
Okay. More eyes would be good.
Hi, this is Roman Janinu. So this is kind of a supporting document for us. I'm trying to kind of figure out how to, as we advance this, how we frame kind of this. So as far as I can see, this document isn't actually referenced by any of the PS work that we're doing.
Any of the what work? I'm sorry.
So one would think that this is a supporting document to help the standards, the stuff on the kind of the proposed standards, and this isn't actually referenced by any of the PS, the proposed standards we have in the working group.
Thank you.
That seems odd to me.
It's a great observation. It is. You know, I don't know why that is, to be honest. I mean, maybe that's because this document's taken a while. I mean, this is really kind of the second incarnation of an architecture draft in this working group, right? Possibly the third. Good.
This is Hank on the mic. One of the reasons is that the new architectural layout has this conveyance bus in the center of it, and which is the biggest difference to the endpoint posture compliance profile, which it does not have this bus in the middle of it, and XMPP grid went to mile, and that was
right.
Basic assumption for this bus. Could also be D-bus, or it could be an IF map or whatever. There's multiple solutions for this. We have had a lot of hackathons where this works, but the primary solution that we wanted to pull in is an RFC now. So that is hard for that RFC to reference its source now anymore.
Right. So I think also the ePCP draft, that solution, I think this architecture draft, and Bill, you can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, is a collection architecture relative to this draft. It's like a sub-architecture, if you will.
Sorry, I was having an offline conversation. So I guess the question I have again is just, maybe I don't yet clearly understand if this is an architecture driving our kind of work. What is the interrelationship between that?
I mean, I think some of this is a historical artifact of the problems the working group had early on. So they tried to do an architecture document, or we tried to do an architecture document. We got all tied up in that, and so we said, let's take a step back and do some of the pieces. And we tabled the architecture document, and then we thought, well, maybe we can come back and do an architecture document that pulls it all together. The other thing I'd like to point out to our Jabberscribe, who is not actually Jabberscribing, Kathleen actually did say in the chat that an architecture document can come at the end and serve as a document to pull all the existing ones together. Oh, she did. Sorry. I didn't see that last sentence. I was reading it earlier. So I think that's an important point, though. Whether you agree with that or not, I think it would be a question for you. But
yeah, I mean, again, I'm preparing for the conversation as we advance this document forward. There is certainly some reticence in other parts of the ISG to publish kind of supporting documents. We typically say supporting documents help us drive kind of other things. And I'm struggling kind of with the asymmetry of being able to articulate what this is helping us drive or decide or document even, frankly, because there really is no dependencies, as we can see, between the kind of the other standards work in this document. We can, of course, take this offline.
Okay.
any other questions?
Sorry, this is Hank. I was reviewing the EPCP draft, and if I'm not absolutely mistaken, I'm pretty sure it references it, but maybe the reference is a little bit broken, so therefore it doesn't show up in the reference by link, I think. But I have to check that because it takes a while.
Yeah, I just used the reference by thing in the data tracker.
Yeah, that is mostly.
Good point.
Okay, I think we'll get to this when we get to next steps. The other question I wanted to ask about this document was we had, in lieu of having virtual interim, we had a design meeting, and whether that was effective and whether that you needed another one of those or not. I know we had talked about doing one between the first one you did and this meeting, and sort of as a chair failure, we didn't get that scheduled for you. So is that, I don't know if you want to talk about that in the context of way forward or
either one. Yeah, I mean, I thought it went well. I think those who participated, I mean, they participated, right? We had a handful of people actually talking about it and getting some things resolved, collecting issues. We addressed quite a few of those issues, and I think just if we continue doing that, it could be helpful.
Okay. I think what I think would be useful would be for you or Bill to drive those meetings. Like we can provide facilities if you need them, but
sure.
Maybe if you could drive the scheduling of them, that would be great.
Got it. Bill to drive all design meetings.
The chair/note taker wrote down Arch authors.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
This is Roman doing. I just kind of want to make sure we don't end on a note. I mean, if the working group wants to publish this because they think they will this will pull it all together when we're done the work, again, I'm happy to kind of advance it. It's just, I think we need to
be prepared.
We need to kind of prepare to be able to kind of answer that question, and be cognizant of, as we're making kind of the other documents, that we frame those other documents as solving problems that we outlined in the architecture.
Okay.
Right, agreed. So one last comment on that, and in the slides, I think we did talk about potentially taking the solution-y kind of parts of the draft that are in there, and I think they're stuffed back in an appendix at this point, taking those out and submitting that as another draft. So maybe an XMPP grid-based specific, solution to this architecture that could be viewed as work that's being driven by this document in some way, right?
Okay. Anything else on this document? I guess we can get Adam out of the queue here.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to actually make Roman a little bit happy in his reference to the documents and document references, but not in something you can search and say yes to. Okay, so information model. So I haven't really made a lot of progress on what's in the information model. So it's really hard to do because there's not enough implementation to try and make sense of how to make a minimal viable set of information elements that make us able to go forward. But for Hank, as to the ask in one of the design meetings, it is actually on GitHub. So there's the link. Hank can feel free to send issues. Anyone else can too, but I know Hank loves that. So feel free to send those. There's no real updates in it, but it's there. It's really minimal, so it'll take you all of 15 minutes to read. All right, so why so little progress? I commented on this a little bit already, or just a moment ago, right? So trying to understand the combination of the architecture draft and implementation for Sacm, and it's not concrete enough. So I've started to do some more kind of implementation experience here. So we're internally at my place, we're working to build a prototype of an XMPP grid implementation for Sacm. I'm trying to use that to drive forward this. I've had some off-list conversations with Bill and Adam as to capture some of the work that was done in previous hackathons as to what needs to be done in extensions. Those extensions to kind of command sets, et cetera, for XMPP grid would really drive what the understanding of what the minimum viable information model needs to be. So at long term or medium term, some term that isn't in the next week is that there would actually be interoperable XMPP grid implementations that can do something novel with regards to Sacm. So I did put like the sketch of a draft. So Adam, Bill, I know that we exchanged all of like 3 emails, but and I know that this would include some of the information that's currently in the appendix of architecture, but I need them like kind of the next set of details, as in, you know, what are the actual commands we'd be exchanging? How do we do discovery? And I'd like to put that in that kind of draft. So there's another URL for a draft there. I'm happy to collaborate with anyone else who wants to start to kind of work on some implementation, because I think I need that to inform kind of the next set of stuff. All right, so I kind of covered this somewhat, but this is kind of my near term. What do I want to actually build and do a test on? So the template in the architecture draft is there, and so Roman, to your kind of comments about you know, things don't reference, this will definitely reference as we go forward. To capture kind of oval evaluation results, one of the things that we do at my place is a lot of IPFix work. So the thing that I've been trying to figure out how to add is, how do I add IPFix observations to compare against oval observations already in there? And frankly, I don't know how to implement it because it's not documented enough to implement. And so these are the kind of the mini goals. I want to be able to put those 2 sets of information in there and then query from implementations either direction to find what those set of results were, and some kind of mechanism that would allow us to do comparisons against network observations against host evaluation results. So and as we talked in the last design meeting, you know, one of the concerns was we're very desktop focused. So if I can get those 2 things working, the next step for me is, how do I get something that isn't a desktop computer involved? So I don't know what that is yet, but that's a to be determined, and I'm happy to have that conversation and help on the list or in one of the design meetings. So all of this would let me drive to what the minimum basic information elements are to kind of enable this set of functionality, and how that interoperates between the architecture and an actual implementation. And that's the goal. So I'd like to, in combination with architecture, I don't know if that would be a standard or a document we throw away. You know, to your point, Roman, about is that a publishable document? Is it I don't know yet. I'm not far enough along in thinking about if writing down kind of, this is how we actually implement it in XMPP grid is a document destined for publication or not. It very well may be, but I'll cross that bridge when we get there and the document's a real document and we can have that conversation. That's it.
Any questions? Any discussion? Is anybody awake? Well, there you have it.
All right. No, Hank had to run it. Go ahead.
No, I'm struggling with joining 2 other working groups right now. The information model, I think, does not have to be standards track, but it has to be well-defined information elements in it that can be instantiated in solutions. So yes, XMPP grid and the terminology draft are basically circling that one. They are somehow all interconnected. And therefore, I think that by moving on with the centerpiece of the architecture and getting that done, we basically have to start terminology and information model at the same time to accommodate that again. And I think that goes hand in hand because they cannot be redundant. You are about the actual information, and the terminology document is about the things that move the information, and the architecture tells you how. And I think this should be well aligned, and maybe we collapse some of them. I'm agnostic to that in the end, actually. And people think less documents are easier to ISG as a gateway function. That is probably true. Unfortunately, they are not all the same track. Maybe. So I don't know.
Yeah. I think I think one of the things that we haven't done well is work on actual implementations that we can interoperate. So that's kind of a push that I want to make, and I want to align those interoperable implementations against kind of information model architecture, et cetera. And I don't want to predispose the answer of what track things are on until we know what documents shake out what way. So what documents really need to be a standard such that this would give you enough information to have workable solutions in the long run.
This is Stephen channeling Adam Montville on Jabber. He notes that he is still interested in continuing these conversations, these discussions. So it was in response to your earlier question about is anyone still interested? Adam says yes.
Yeah, so I will say that Adam, Bill, you guys did respond and tell me what timeline I should expect for responses, and you guys aren't, out of the bounds of whatever. So, to the extent that we bring it back to some design meetings, I think would be useful for everybody.
And Bill didn't prepend this with Mike, but I think this is relevant. Bill says he is still working on getting more XMPP specific information into its own draft and over to you for your folks.
Okay.
That's a response to your
Great.
What you're doing there. Yeah.
Okay. I hate this setup. What?
I really want the pink square moved. Which one? There's not.
Okay. Oh, there is no. Oh. It's okay. All right. So this is actually the way ahead portion, but we don't have a slide that says way ahead. In my head we did, but apparently in reality we do not. So you wanted to talk about milestones. I wanted to talk about meetings. So why don't we go to milestones first?
Yeah, my indelicate question about milestones is actually unrelated to the dates to the things we have existing documents on, but we have milestones to do things that I don't even see individual unadopted things for in the queue. And I just wanted to ask the question, are we still holding a marker to do that work, or do I just not understand the purpose of other documents that we do have in the queue? So specific, I'm talking about Yang push.
ECP over transfer.
Yeah, ECP transfer.
So you have comments on that? Go ahead. You can use this.
So I think that there's, as we move forward implementation, Yang push could very well come back. I did have a hallway conversation with Nancy, and she'd be willing to interoperate Cisco's XMPP, which they did build some Yang capability. I don't know if that's its own document at this point, but as far as a marker for a possible thing, I'm okay with that. And Hank might have some comments on Yang push as a document, but I don't believe, unless I don't know if Jess is still on. If Jess has some thoughts on transfer, As she should be. Jess should be asleep now.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this is Roman speaking again. Okay, I guess I'm just a little confused because we said we would be done a year and a half ago. Are we still sure we want to do this, I guess is the question. And if we do,
Right.
let's talk.
So when you came on board in July, is that when you came on board? We updated the milestones that we had drafts for, and the others I just left alone because I'm not aware of drafts that are coming in. So they're in our charter. Those are the original published milestones from the charter, and you're right. We don't currently have any drafts for that. So
this is Hank. Yang push was blocked and pushed back and blocked as arbitrary reasons for 3 years. That is the reason why we did not proceed with that, because it was churned so hard by people, and at least back and forth, that the primary authors actually said, okay, we are abandoning this and leaving the IETF. So fortunately, at the last turn, they made it. So that is a good thing. Back when there was not so much churn, we provided at the hackathon a proof of concept that Yang Push and XMPP Grid literally with running code already could exist. But all the people that were involved in that were demotivated by the pushback process in areas and are gone. That is a reason why this process has stalled.
right. So there was the ancient history, which was all of the pushback and churn.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the hackathon / rechartering activity. And at that point, we were like, is this something we still want to do or not?
Mm-hmm.
All of that pushback had happened. All of that history existed. And then at that point in time, we said, yes, we do want to do this.
Yes, but
There's no draft on the table. I'm not going to write it. So
yeah, and I cannot write it at the moment because I'm overloaded. And the people that would like to have written that jumped ship and said, we will not come back again.
So at this point, if the draft were to come onto the table, it would come from you. Is that what you're saying? And we don't have time right now, but you are still.
I'm more inclined to convince some of the people to come back. Because I cannot do everything by myself. I cannot write every draft as a lead author. I like to be author, but I cannot be a lead author.
Right.
That's just simply not possible.
I guess my point is the point at which we had the conversation about rewriting, about rechartering. We had the conversation about the history.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew what the history was at that point in time. And we still said, yes, this is something still worth doing.
Yeah.
So if we think at this point in time it's still worth doing, then we should leave it here and we should update a date that makes more sense.
We can also change the scope a little bit because I'm focusing on concise Yang telemetry right now, and that's basically also using push, but it's always in binary. And I have more support on that route. NetConf yesterday confirmed that it is worthwhile and we want to do that. And therefore, I think that is a slight change of serialization, but the concept will stay the same.
I'm okay putting a new date on this. If we change the direction, as you were saying, we should get feedback from the working group that that's the thing we want to do.
So,
really quick, I will say that if a Yang push document came here, I would certainly be interested in providing review support, writing it. I'm not going to be the one that writes it and brings it here by any means, but if it is here, I'd be interested in looking at it.
okay, that's very helpful, Stephen. Thank you. So, since the milestone is actually an initial draft, do you want to say 6 months, or are you as AD comfortable with us leaving it as 2018?
If more discussion needs to happen to figure out what the plan for it is, I'm perfectly comfortable with that. I mean, part of it is I wanted to hear that the milestone is even something that we want to do. typically, again, it's just I'm observing in abnormal physics. Typically, we have a milestone, and the challenge we have is that there are competing individual things, and we don't know kind of what to do with it, and there is just even the absence of anything as the starting point, and we said we wanted to do it a long time ago. So if it's still a thing we want to do, and we just need to figure out the timeline to get there, I'm perfectly comfortable with us just sorting that out.
Okay, so we'll leave the date for now, and we'll figure out a timeline going forward. So the second one was the ECP over transfer mechanism. I have no idea on that.
No clue.
No clue. Anybody? Adam.
Hey guys, you missed me, right?
We did.
Okay. I don't know. I see value in if I'm understanding what ECP over transfer mechanism is. I think it's now EPCP over transfer mechanism. And I mentioned earlier that the EPCP work, the Sacm architecture basically views as a collection sub-architecture, if you will, or collection architecture that, and I think that EPCP over transfer really intends to get the information that that collection architecture is grabbing into the integration service for further downstream use. So I think it's still valuable at some point. Yeah, so we'll see how that turns out. And if somebody in the room has a different memory or different recollection of what that is, you know, please correct me.
So if we think we still want to do that, I just wanted to ask the question, who is going to do that?
Good question.
Well, as a follow-up question to that, whose was this in the first place? Like, why? Who put that there? Because I don't like. I mean, I could guess what it means, like you, Adam, right? I mean, I can kind of figure it out, but I have no idea what that even means. I mean,
I'm really worried by the fact that we're not even sure.
I think it's a ghost milestone. I don't know. I mean, Jess is not here. Is it possible that this is something that Jess was working on? I want to make sure that we don't take it off and it's something that she cares about. So but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say again, I would be concerned that we don't even understand what the milestone is, and then kind of the question is, we all think it's a good idea, but does someone want to work on it? And we can think it's a good idea, but if no one's working on it, it's not clear we should have it. But we can take it to the list to sort that out if we need to do the archaeology.
Well, I know that Adam and I were the co-chairs at the time that we did the rechartering discussion, and everything that was in the chartering discussion was something that somebody was advocating for. Yeah, and so I just don't remember what it was. So I mean.
So maybe we could ask, do the archaeology and ask, and if not, pull it off.
Okay, so we will look into that one a little bit more.
Okay.
The Rowley descriptor one. I know we've had a conversation on this. Go ahead, Stephen.
Is this for configuration?
Yeah, the configuration checklist.
Yeah, it's kind of been in a holding pattern for a long time. It still is in a holding pattern at this time. So I think at this point it makes sense to not represent it as a hard milestone, but as work that might get done. And if it does, it would be proper to do it in this working group. But at this point, it doesn't seem, and maybe I'm misunderstanding milestones, Roman, and you can tell me, but I don't know if it's a hard objective that we need to meet in order to be successful, but
yeah, it was almost done at some point. And why did we put it into a holding pattern?
Well, it reached 90% done, which means we were about 50% done with the work. And getting that last 50% slowed down for a couple reasons. I mean, that's what I'll say about it, is it's not a hard objective for the working group, I don't think. It means it doesn't need to get done to meet things. It's something that I'd like to see get done at some point.
I mean, it wasn't something that was controversial. It was just something that we sort of ran out of steam and energy on.
Sure.
That's actually right. Yeah, I think I'm still on, right? Sorry, Stephen. Yeah, so I think at some point we were actually on the hook to write that draft. And you know, we were overcome by events essentially, which I know might be a cop-out to some people, but it does happen. And then I think, you had offered to kind of take it over, but then obviously you've been busy with all the other things as well. So,
right.
you know, some of these drafts I think are subject to, you know, simple capacity constraints at this point. This happens to be one of them. I think that ECP over transfer is another one, because at some point in the future, once the architecture is baked enough and we have more concreteness there, I think it would be useful to have that draft, and that would be something that I think CIS would consider contributing to. You know, I can't say for sure, but I think that's, I don't know, that's what I see.
So thinking about it more, I think that it's something that I could get back on the table, because we do have 90% of the draft done. So I could resurrect that text, get the draft unexpired and back up in our draft, so that at least we can start talking about it during meetings and start soliciting feedback and seeing what people have to think about it. And Adam and Bill, I know you guys are busy, so if it's here in Sacm, at least during the meetings, we can talk about it and get some feedback and kind of hear some of the important stuff. Would that be useful if it was a live draft that we could talk about at the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, it's easy enough for me. Roman?
So yeah, that works for me, Roman. I just wanted to explain, so you know, the question was asked about what's the magic of milestones. There's no magic to milestones. Generally, working groups have a fixed scope, and with that scope, we understand what it takes to be done. Working groups aren't open, you know, for an indefinite period of time, and so I've been using the milestones better to understand what it takes to be done. And I just find, again, confusion, as I kind of said, where we have things in the distant past, we're not sure what they are, and we don't have kind of, I haven't heard a plan to kind of get closure to them, and I'm trying to get to that closure.
I mean, we tried fairly hard when we did the rechartering to put, like I said, milestones that people were committed to doing, and that was the only thing that we put on there, and not the aspirational things that people were saying we should do, but the things that people wanted to do. And that's why, you know, some of the documents that had originally started in this were taken off the table. So at least at a point 2 years ago, people said they wanted to do these. So
I'll have that draft live for the next IETF.
thank you. So that brings us to the end of the milestone review. The only last thing was, is there any other business people want to bring up? Okay. And then the last thing I had was a plan for between now and the next meeting, for better or for worse. This is a working group that seems to drive to milestones, drive to like dates, meeting dates and things like that. So we've already discussed doing design team meetings driven by the authors of the architecture document. Would we like to have a virtual interim between now and then, in addition to whatever the design team meetings turn into? Is that helpful? Adam is nodding yes. Okay, well, why don't we target a virtual interim sometime in mid-January? And we will do a doodle poll and see what we end up with that. All right? Excellent. So with that, thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of the day. Good night to those of you who joined late in the evening. And thank you for joining.
Cool. Have fun, guys.
Bye.
Hey, gals. See ya. Bye.